Thank you for purchasing Accordion Builder and for watching this video tutorial. In this video, we're going to go through Accordion Builder and its interface, how to use it to build a page, and I'll try to make it as easy as possible for you to understand how Accordion Builder works. First, we're going to install the plugin. This is a normal WordPress site, and I'm on the plugins page where I can install this plugin. So you simply click this button to add a new plugin. Then we click the Upload Plugin button. And I have this plugin downloaded somewhere, so I'll locate it, select it, and click on Open. Now I can install it. So now the plugin is installed, and I just need to activate it. Okay, once we've finished installing and activating the plugin, we'll be redirected to this page where we have to choose what type of content we're going to include in Accordion Builder Pro. We can see that page is automatically checked. That refers to a WordPress page, but you can also select Posts, and then save it. So when you open up the Create New Post or Page interface, you're going to see the Accordion Builder button ready for you to use. So I'm just going to save my settings here. So let's start off by creating a simple page, and I'll explain to you how Accordion Builder works. So let's go to our pages. I already have this homepage selected, so I'm just going to go in and edit it, and we'll start from here. When you open a new page interface, you're going to see the visual and text tabs as normal. But you'll also see this tab called Accordion Builder. To start using Accordion Builder, just click the tab. And now you'll arrive at the Accordion Builder interface. Here you have your Help button, you've got your Templates area, and you have your front-end editor. Templates might not be available for you as this is a feature of the Accordion Builder Pro package. Down here is your Content area. And every time you want to go back to the basic WordPress editor, you just click on this. For now, we're going to focus on the Accordion Builder interface. Under here you have your rows. On Accordion Builder we're using a grid layout. So what that means is content is going to be laid out in a simple grid layout, with rows, and each row has a number of columns. This, for example, is a single row, with one column. This one has 2 columns, 3, 4, 5, etc. Now you can select one column, and depending on your needs you can add more columns as you go along. Or you could add 6 and remove them as needed. We're going to see all the possibilities as we go along. So let's go ahead and add a 1-column row. When we add this, we can also see a button to add additional columns. We only have 1 row and 1 column at this point, and we also have this button here to publish or unpublish your rows. Right now it's on Publish, meaning all content in this row will be published. Now if we turn it off, irrespective of what you have here, none of that content in that row will be published on the final page. So I'm going to leave it on and go on to the next option. Here you have a number of preferences for the row. You can set a number of options here, but we'll talk about those a bit later on. Next we have a Duplicate Row button, a Delete Row button, and a Move the Row button. So let's start from here, where we can add a new column. Watch what happens when I click this button. But before I do that, notice that this single row has a single column. Once I click this button, we're going to see a second column appear. So if you wanted to have a content block on one side with an image and text on the other, you could use this kind of layout. If you click this button again, then another column appears. And you can keep doing this to create the number of columns that you want. Just remember, you can add up to 6 columns. If you try to add any more than that, you won't be able to. With that in mind, I'm just going to remove a few of these columns. I'm going to leave about 2 columns, I think. Let's look at the Duplicate option. If we click this, we can see that we've duplicated our row. So whatever content I had previously in this row will be duplicated into this row. To move this, we can just drag and drop. We'll delve into this later in the tutorial, so let's just remove this row for the time being. So first of all, let's make a header for our page. So to better understand, I've made an illustration of the header section I'm going to make. That's to say the header of the page that we're making for this website. So here we're going to have a background, an image here, and 2 blocks of text with a button. So let's get started. So here we have our 2 columns. On this side we're going to have an image. And here we'll have our blocks of text and a button. So first of all I click this button, and all the elements I can insert into this area appear. All these elements are great for making up the content to go in your columns. And here you have a search bar, where you can filter down the different elements that you're interested in. So for example, if I type in text, the text element appears. And you can type in the name of the element that you're interested in, and it will filter down all your options for you. Then up here, you can also filter down the different elements by clicking these options here, so things like social, marketing, and WordPress widgets. So I'm going to go back here and look for a single image. So here's the single image here, and we also have an image gallery down here, and you can also have an image slider. But for our purposes, I'm just going to insert a single image. So I click here, and the editor interface refreshes with these options. You can easily drag this editor to any point on your page to move it out the way. I'm just going to leave it over here for the time being. This image here is the default image, and is the logo for Origin Builder. So I'm on the General tab, and I'm going to import the image from the Media Library. I simply click this button, Open Image Library. And here I'm going to look for the image. There we have it. I just click Select, and you can choose the image size as medium, large or thumbnail. I'm going to leave it as large. We can add a caption, we can align the image as well. If I select Center, then this image is going to be center aligned in this particular column. Likewise, if I align it left, it'll be aligned to the left-hand side. Let's leave it at the center. Then we have the On-Click Event drop-down. And this sets the behavior when you click on the image. Leave it on None if you don't want anything to happen. Otherwise, set it to a link or whatever you'd like. I'm going to leave it on None. So this is just going to be a plain image with nothing else. In the Design tab, you can change various things about the design of the image. You can change the margin or the padding of the image. You can set a border, and also the text color, etc. We'll get into this a little bit later, so let's just set up some basic design. Click on here, and our image appears here. Before we continue, I'd like you to know that Origin Builder has a front-end editor and a back-end editor. Right now, we're in the back-end editor. To get to the front-end editor, just click this button here. Before we do that, let's click on the Update button to save our changes. Now we'll go to the front-end editor to continue our work. The changes are saved, so let's click this button. And here we have the front-end editor. Here's the image we just added. So what's interesting here is that we have more options. On the front-end editor, you can switch between the desktop view, tablet view, and also mobile view. With both the tablet view and the mobile view, you get 2 options down here. You can rotate the device, and you can also attach the device. By clicking this option, we can see that we've attached the design to a mock-up of an iPhone, and so if we rotate that, we can see more clearly the way that things are laid out. Likewise, with the tablet interface, we can do the same thing. We can attach the device and then rotate it to see how things look on a tablet. Let's go back to the desktop view to continue our work. Next, we're going to add text. So if we go back to our illustration quickly, we can see that we've added our image on the left, and now we're going to add some text boxes on the right-hand side and the button below it. So I'll go back to our browser, click on Add Elements, and then I'll choose Text. I'm just going to add some text, and I'll add some design to this. I'll choose a font. We've included some Google fonts in here. Let's choose Open Sans and then change the font size. I'll just click here to save my changes. Next, we'll add another text block. Now you can see there are some plus icons here. If you click the plus button on the top, you're going to add a new element just above this one. If you click the bottom one, it will add a block below this element. So as we want to add a block of text below this one, we can click the bottom plus sign, or we can duplicate this block and just move it below. Let's try that first. So we can hover over the options here in order to duplicate this column text. So we can see there's a kind of hierarchy here. I can hover over column and see the options there, or I can hover over row and we can see the whole area is highlighted. So every option you choose under row is going to affect the whole row. Everything you choose under column would affect everything under column, and likewise everything under column text will affect the column text element. So I'm just going to duplicate this text element. And now I'm going to paste in my text. And now I'm going to save my changes. So you can see how easy it is to duplicate an element and then just edit the content. So the next thing I want to do is to add a button. So I'll click the plus button down here and choose button. I can put my button title here. Then I'll choose the link. You can simply put your URL here, or you can choose a page. You can select your button size. I'll use the normal button size. I'm going to set the border radius style to 0. And let me change the colors slightly. And I'll make the text color white. Now if I want to add an icon to this button, I can do that by clicking this checkbox here and selecting the icon I want. Let's choose something that looks like a download button in this example. As soon as I click that, we can see the download icon in place. Now we can change the icon position. And whatever change I make here is going to be reflected on the right-hand side. And remember, we can drag the elements options out of the way so we can see our design in the background. So I'm going to save our changes. And our next task is to try to align this button so that it's centered like these. If we hover over column, then we have some options. I'm just going to click on column itself. Then I'll go to design. Now I want it to be centered, so I'm going to choose text align center. And the button now appears in the center. Save our changes. And now we have something like this. So now I want to give them some kind of margin, so I can align them perfectly. You can simply drag this down a bit. And we can also give this top button a margin. In this case, let's say 35 pixels. And then I'll give this a top margin of, say, about 40 pixels. And just keep adjusting things until it looks right. And of course, this is your choice. You design it how you want it to look. That's the idea of Origin Builder in the first place. If you hover over here, you can see you have two columns. This little handle here lets you change the width of the column. By clicking and dragging, you can change the width of this column. It's really as simple as clicking and dragging left or right. Okay, I want to set a colorful background. How do I do that? Like I explained earlier, any change that I do on this button area will affect just the button. Anything in the column area will affect the column. And anything on the row area will affect the whole row. So we want to set a background image on the whole row. So if I click on it and go to the Design tab, I scroll down a bit, and we can check this box for the background image. But let's forget that for a moment and go to background color. You can see how easy it is to just add a background color to the whole row. But I prefer to use an image, so I'm going to check this box, go to Open Image Library, and choose something I've already uploaded. I just highlight it and then click Select. Now I don't want this background to repeat, so from this drop down I'll just choose No Repeat. Of course, you can choose to repeat things horizontally or vertically by choosing these options here. You can also change the background position, the background attachment. So if you want things to scroll with the page, you'd have scroll selected. Or you can fix it if you don't want the background to move while you scroll the page. Normally, I leave my pages on scroll so that the image moves with the page. For the background size, we have different options. We can choose length if we want it to go the entire length of the row, but we want it to cover the entire row, so let's choose this option. So I'll save my changes, And now we can see the image that's been inserted in the background. So let's go ahead and modify this image a bit in this left-hand column. So I can drag this down to give it a bit of a margin. But an easier way is to click the image and go to Design. And we can give it a 40 pixel margin on the left-hand side too. We'll give it 40 pixels on the top margin as well. So that looks fine. Now we'll go to the front-end editor to continue our work. The changes are saved, so let's click this button. So a little trick here is that if you want the same margin on every side, you can click this button here. Just change whatever you want, and it will add the same margin on every side of the image. In this case, I want to leave everything with 40 pixels margin, and you can also add your padding. Now I click Save, and this is what we have. Now at this point I want to change this so that it has white text color. Okay, so if I scroll down here I can see some more options. Now this is the same as what we saw in the back-end editor. Now I want to add something similar, so I'm going to click on the two-column icon. In this case I'm going to duplicate this title here, and I'm going to drag it right down into our new area. Since our text is white on a white background, we can't see it currently. So what I'm going to do is give this row some color, so that we can see the text. So I click on the element, then I go to the row area, and click on Edit, and into the Design tab. Now we can choose the background color. So let's leave it at that, and just save our changes. Now we can see the text that we have here. We're going to duplicate this text here, and we're going to drag it below the title in our new row. And we'll change the title text to simple drag and drop interface. Now to make it easier to see your text, it's probably worth changing it to a different color just while you type it in. Then afterwards we can change it back to white. I'm going to change the font size as well. And let's change it back to white, and save the changes. Let's make some other text changes here. I'm going to paste in this lorem ipsum text, and I'll set the font to Open Sans so that it matches the other text box we have above it. And finally, I'll change the font size. So let's leave it at 16 pixels and left align the text. Now we're going to change the margin slightly, and I'm going to adjust this so that the column is a little bit thinner. Okay, so next I want to add the image. I'm going to click on Single Image, and I'll find my image. Let's choose this one, and click Save Changes. Let me try to give this a slight margin. Okay, that looks fine. So let's save this page and get a preview. So here's the page. So if we go into the admin end, we can get the permalink of the page, and we can see a preview. So here's the page that we just created. So I'm going to go ahead and add the next section. In order to see the changes we've been making on the front-end editor, we're going to need to refresh the page in the admin end. So let me just do that. And our new content should come up. So here we can see the first row and the second row. So I'm going to create the next section here in the back end. Let me show you how we'll do that. Let's add a two-column row. Now I'm going to add an inner row here. What an inner row allows you to do is to have the main row with your two columns, and then inside one column you can add a row that can be divided into a further two columns. I can do that by clicking here. So inside this column we now have an additional two columns. Let's duplicate this row, and then create something similar on this column. We'll also duplicate this row here. Create another two columns. And so what I want to do is maybe have an icon here and a block of text here. So let's add our icon here. I'm going to choose our icon from the library. I'm going to align it to the center, then save our changes. Now if I scroll down, we can see that we have our icon here. And now we're going to add our text on the right-hand side. We'll select the text element. Just paste in some text here. So I'm just going to save this. Now we're going to add content to the other areas, but to save time, we're just going to duplicate what we've done so far. So let's delete the rows that we've created so far. And then we'll just duplicate these. Do the same on the right-hand side. And we're going to re-add our inner row on the right-hand side. So we can duplicate and drag and drop. Now if you notice, there's quite a cool thing here. We can adjust the areas of the content using this drag handlebar. Just like on the front end, you can click and drag in order to change the width of each column. I'm going to do the same on this side. And let's also duplicate this here. I also want to replace these images. So I click on the pencil icon, open up our gallery, and scroll down to a different icon. Save our changes, and do the same in the other areas. And of course, we can also customize the text however we want it. Next thing, I also want to save a background color to this row. So if I click this button here, we have the row settings. Then I go to the Design tab, and I can set a background color here. Since we are working on the back end, we won't see the changes update live, like we do on the front end. So what we need to do is we'll need to refresh the preview on the front end. Let's leave this on something like this, and save our changes. Now we're going to update, and look on our front end to see what we have. So this will show us what we've just been creating in the back end. So you should remember that any changes you make in the back end will need to be saved, and then you can refresh the front end to see your changes. Okay, so I'm just going to scroll down. And here we have what we've just created. And you can change the size of these icons, as well as anything else like the text. So in this tutorial, we've gone through the basic design options of Origin Builder. We've looked at the layouts and we've looked at the styling. We've looked at the columns and what we can do in order to change the size and width of those columns. We've shown how you can create a simple web page using images, text, and a button. And we've also used inner rows so that we can create additional columns, so we can add two types of content in a single row. So in the next videos, we'll explore more features of things like this in Mint app and tactics for creating more complex features within your website. Thanks for watching.